Representative Torres, you are a profile in courage, possessing unimpeachable moral clarity and an indomitable spirit to tell the truth. Thank you very much. On a personal note, take the photo first. On a personal note, when I was growing up, your congressional district was the most important district for myself and my friends. And we didn't live in your district. You see, I grew up in a place called East New York, in the projects in Brooklyn. Some people might know East New York. For those who don't know East New York, Mike Tyson was afraid to walk the streets during daylight hours. But what got us through, the only consolation we had was no matter how terrible East New York was, at least it wasn't the South Bronx. The South Bronx changed, though. Marsha Blackburn was elected to the U.S. Senate in 2018, representing the great state of Tennessee. Before her election to the Senate, she represented Tennessee's 7th Congressional District from 2003 to 2019. In the few years she's been in the Senate, she has established herself as one of Israel's greatest defenders. In her own words, Senator Blackburn's statement on October 7th include, and I quote, "We must continue to support our strongest ally in the Middle East and their right to defend themselves against these unprovoked, horrific attacks. I stand with Israel and join many around the world in praying for the safety and security of the people of Israel." Senator Blackburn was a sponsor of the Revoke Iran Funding Act, and she introduced Senate Resolution 413, which I quote, "A resolution condemning foreign nationals in the United States who have endorsed and espoused the actions of foreign terrorist organizations in Gaza." Just yesterday, on December 4th, Senator Blackburn called for an investigation into the allegation that UNRWA employees, United Nations employees, detained Israeli hostages in Gaza. That is, UN employees were complicit with Hamas. I have placed one copy on every table of that letter that Senator Blackburn sent to the U.S. Ambassador to the United Nations and to the Commissioner General of UNRWA. If I outline all of Senator Blackburn's initiatives in support of our only democratic ally in the Middle East, I'd monopolize the rest of the evening. Instead, let me introduce to you now Senator Blackburn.
What a fantastic group. I am absolutely thrilled to be here with you this evening and to spend a few minutes with you. I think that you all know how to celebrate and have a good time when you come together, and it's been such a pleasure to hear your spirit of hopefulness and to hear about your support and your thankfulness for the things that we are doing to support you and to support Israel. I think it is so important. It is so important for us to remember that over 75 years ago, it was the United States of America that was the first country to step up and recognize Israel as a nation and to support Israel's right to exist. And now, as Israel is facing these attacks, it is more important than ever for us to send the message that the United States stands shoulder to shoulder with Israel. Now, as we in the Senate, and also our colleagues that are there in the House, as we look at this issue, it is imperative that we, the United States, extend to Israel every possible resource, every feasible resource, including military assistance, to enable Israel to defeat the barbarians who are trying to wipe Israel off the map. And now more than ever, it is imperative that this nation have a very effective foreign policy that does not empower terrorist and rogue regimes. We ought not to take any actions that are going to empower terrorist organizations and groups or enrich them so that they continue to carry out malign activities. And one of the things that has been frustrating to us is this push for appeasement. There is no place for appeasement in this nation's foreign policy. I have to tell you that one of the things we have worked on is pushing to make certain that we freeze the $6 billion and the $10 billion that went to Iran. And Rep. Torres talked a little bit about Iran. And yes, freezing these funds and also enforcing the oil sanctions that had been in place on Iran, putting those back in place because Iran had gotten to the point that they could hardly sell any oil. The revenues were not there. Right now, Iran is bringing in about $1 billion a week in oil sales. You and I know what they do with that money. It goes into funding terrorism. It goes into enriching uranium. It is time for us to make certain that sanctions are activated against Iran. Now, one of the things that we think is very important to do is to cut all of these fundings that are going to Iran's proxies. As I mentioned, whether it is Hamas, Hezbollah, the Houthis, ISIS Iraq, ISIS Syria, the Islamic State, Iran is the primary funder of all of these. And one of the things that we have done, that I've done, is to lead 2 separate letters to the Biden administration to push for freezing the $6 billion ransom payment, the $10 billion that would be there for Iran from the oil sales. And the Senate recently passed a measure that I had drafted. It's a part of the NDAA, and we're hopeful that our House friends are going to keep that in place, and it would formalize our demand to freeze that money that is going to Iran. We also have focused on the so-called humanitarian aid that is going into Gaza, that the terrorists are beginning to avail themselves of. Here is what we know. David mentioned the work we're doing regarding UNRWA and the importance of that work. What we know is that UNRWA has hired people that are affiliated with Hamas. We know that their schools have graduated over 100 terrorists. We know that Hamas is using those schools to store weapons and to store armory. We also know that Hamas has stolen money over the past decade from UNRWA. They have used that money for food, for fuel, for medical supplies. Make no mistake, that money that has been going into UNRWA is not going to care for impoverished people. Much of that money is going to fuel the evil, barbaric works that Hamas is carrying out. So I have, in addition to the work we've done to hold UNRWA accountable and the letter to our UN ambassador to conduct an investigation into what UNRWA has done, I have filed legislation that would freeze all funding to UNRWA until thank you. We would freeze all funding to UNRWA until Iran is kicked out of the UN. So, as we are discussing a supplemental in the Senate floor, one of the provisions that I've called to take place is that we remove any funding that would go into Gaza so that we are certain that that money is not going to end up with Hamas. As I talk to Tennesseans, they do not want one single penny of U.S. taxpayer money going to support Hamas. So, we've also done a little bit of work on the domestic side. My colleague, Senator Jackie Rosen from Nevada, and I had yes, applaud Jackie Rosen. She's done a great job. She and I decided to do a resolution together, which we did. We were joined by Senator Van Hollen and Senator Langford on this resolution. It went through the U.S. Senate with a 100% unanimous vote. And the resolution was a resolution of condemnation. It was condemning the anti-Semitic protest and pro-Hamas rallies that are taking place on our nation's college campuses. So it was such a pleasure to stand with you today. It's been such a pleasure to stand while the rabbi prayed for the nation of Israel. And I would encourage each of you, as you go through the holiday season, know that many are praying for you. They are praying for the nation of Israel. They are praying for the IDF forces. They are praying for the hostages and their speedy release. What a pleasure to join you tonight. May God bless you all. Thank you.